Hi, this is Steve Peters, and you're listening to Inspirado Projecto.
One, two, three, four, baby. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. The end credits are rolling of Sam and Max Save the World, the remix. It's now the 1st of February. And this game, for anyone who played the Lucasfilm games growing up, like Maniac Mansion, Zack McCracken, Monkey Island, those kind of the point-and-click adventures where you had to look around and go use this with that, and you get into this, I mean, it's like Zelda. You can't just simply help find the cat. You have to...
When are we going to get another case, Sam? Surely the local lawbreakers must miss our esoteric brand of personalized criminal justice.
This is so great. The ending of this is so great. All these characters that you came across throughout the whole thing, because this takes place over like 5 adventures, 5 different sort of episodes or cases that these two guys are solving. One of them's a dog, like McGraw, the crime-fighting dog. He's Sam, and then Max is sort of like a Bugs Bunny mixed with Roger Rabbit. And then there are these mafia dudes who are very much kind of like Goodfellas or Sopranos. Oh my gosh. The dialogue is so witty. It's interesting because with this, you simply click on something and then you look in your inventory and then you just simply, like, there's no language really. It's just with pictures.
This is it. Where's the food? Surely there's a buffet back here.
These guys, they're so clever. These guys are so clever. These writers, I gotta tell you, it's poetry. It's got like that...
I'm an ongoing project, like a golden calf or a graven image. I'll only rest once people are sacrificing their firstborn unto me. Also, I'd like to direct. Ow!
So there are all these characters that are in these end credits that you came across. Oh gosh, the credits are huge. The credits are long. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is just so clever. The car that they drive around, they call the DeSoto. This is across kind of like the Bluesmobile. These guys are detectives. They're freelance police. And, there are musical numbers in this thing. You come across a giant Abraham Lincoln. It's like Mad Magazine type of humor.
I want to map of the Netherlands on my Netherlands.
There's a 2007 to 2020. So they must have started making this in 2007. So this game, when you play it, there are 5 separate episodes, and it's cool how they all intertwine, they all interweave with each other. The dialogue between the two guys is just really... It's so beautifully facetious. There's nothing like... Oh gosh, how do I explain it? They allude to things. Like, it's so cool, man, because like there are tons of things that are subliminal, that just like production design pieces that are in the backgrounds that recall subconsciously earlier things in the game that you had seen before. So it kind of like it's like it's like the game makers put this foreshadowing in there, knowing that that's going to be the thing that's going to help you out in the future. And then you learn how to do, like, you have to experiment with testing things out with things, the most ridiculous things, like even something that doesn't even work early on in the game. Like, okay, you might not be able to open up a microwave early on in the game. Later on, you can. Early on in the game, you can't take things off or let's say later on in the game, you can't take things off a shelf, but earlier on in the game, you can. The character traits are awesome. The simplicity, the absurdity, the unapologetic surrealism that is woven throughout every single scene. You can talk to Max and ask him things. You can ask him for hints, and he'll say, he won't even give you, like you ask him, okay, how do we unlock the door? How do we unlock the door of this lunar lander? And his hint is, I don't know, do they have AAA on the moon? So you're wondering, okay, what does AAA have to do with unlocking a door to a lunar lander where the keys are locked inside? And you go, okay, what's the correlation there? Because you realize there's a riddle hiding in there. And it's up to you to figure out the commonalities. It's up to you to figure out the connections between these things. A lot of it is just experimenting. Just when you think all hope is lost, you have to experiment with yet one more thing on that page or interacting with that specific thing that you didn't even expect to interact with before. It's fun because there's humor. Like, you come across these child actors that were really big way back in the day. Let's say they were sort of similar, like to the what do they call them? Oh my gosh, Our Gang, Little Rascals. It reminds you of that. Like, okay, they were the Little Rascals of their heyday. Mickey Rooney, you know. They carry with them, they're respected as like a living history book, so to speak, because they lived through that era. And you get to respect them in that fashion. So now they're making a comeback. And they're on... It's so funny because they updated this thing. So it was made in 2007, but they updated it. So they made... So I never played the original version of this, but they made the computer graphics to look even more like... You know, with today's technology, you can really mess with, you know, like how Pixar does and stuff. These guys are just... It's so crazy, dude, because they comment upon today's things in subtle ways. They don't even realize how far ahead of their time they were. So this thing was released in 2020. I wonder how, like, I don't know how much was like created way back then and just so happened to echo our current times, and what is added onto the update that echoes our current times, because there are certain things that are like, whoa, like little... They never give an allegiance to either side of some specific thing. They always show the other side of the coin. They show the good and the bad and the reasons why bad things are done in the name of good. Like, there's a part in the game where you ask them, you're like, I want to... Like, these guys are, you know, these guys are police, freelance police. These guys are supposed to be on the side of the good, of the law, of what's lawful, of, you know, busting the bad guys for doing bad stuff. Well, you guys end up stealing things, and you ask your little buddy, okay, well, I need some, you know, give me some advice here. What do we do to steal this thing? And he's like, well, you're gonna need a mule. And you wonder, I'm going to need a mule. So that's a riddle in itself. Okay, what do I need a mule for? What's the mule? What do you mean? What does a mule do? Oh, a mule is kind of like those people where you always hear about, like there are those movies where those people who get in a big trouble, they get caught into some like crazy gang cartel thing that they didn't realize that they were stepping foot into, because some guy said, I want to pay you $50,000 to carry this package. They are the mule. You carry this package. You risk your life. You risk your reputation. You risk your freedom. But you don't realize that that's what you're signing a contract for. That's the interesting thing. Like they say, don't accept gifts from fairies, because if you accept a gift from a fairy, the fairies automatically assume you're in a life contract with them now. What that means, I don't fully know. I haven't gone fully deeply into it. But these are things I'm learning from TikTok. I have a friend on there named Kikachu who told me about, she's very weary of fairies, and she learned all about this on what's basically called witch talk. You see the interesting trends that follow along on TikTok, and the names that are given to things, and you see someone starts a trend saying game talk. Let's say you got a channel where it's all just about old Atari games. Well, you would probably, as in nod of it, you would call it game talk. I'm sure there's a Sam and Max talk out there. So, gosh, this is so great. Thank you so much, Emily Morganti. If you're listening to this, thank you so much, Emily Morganti, for giving me this review copy of Sam and Max. I mean, this was like, it's so interesting because those early Lucasfilm games, I want to say that Sam and Max was made allusions to throughout the history of Lucasfilm games, LucasArts games. I want to say that, like, maybe there's a poster for them in Zach McCracken. I'm making a vegan hot dog right now. I love the veganese. Oh my God. I don't know about you, but sometimes I love to just slather veganese on toast and just eat it. Like, that is just so, it's just so satisfying. Oh my God. Just the taste of it itself is so good. So, through the years, I'm sure there's an entire culture that loves Sam and Max, that is gathered around them throughout the years. From the little that I'm realizing, I think they had cartoons. I'm pretty sure they had cartoons, which I think is just phenomenal. Just that idea of having a cartoon that was created from a video game. Kind of like, you could say that they did that for Pac-Man. They've done that for a lot of cartoons. Didn't they do that for Castlevania too? But this, like, there's something that just tickles me inside that's just particularly exciting with this situation, because it's got that LucasArts connection. It's got that early LucasArts connections, and that was just such a nostalgic time. It's such a nostalgic time for me. Every time I play a point-and-click game, oh my God, man. Every time I play a point-and-click game, I'm reminded of those days of playing those LucasArts games. And it was such great satisfaction, my brother and I. It was such great satisfaction playing those early point-and-click games. I think a game like this, now, I don't even want to hear myself admit this out loud. There are 3 times during Sam and Max. Okay, I'm going to tell you. All right, I'm going to divulge this information to you, and I don't like hearing myself say it out loud. So just know that, okay? There's an aspect of shame in what I'm about to tell you here. I looked online. I know. You're like, oh no, I know it's coming here. Yeah, I looked online and I saw some walkthroughs for particular times. I'm not going to tell you what those times were. In the olden days, there would be no walkthrough. You know, in the 1980s, there was no walkthrough. You had your brother or your sister or your friend. I think that's how those point-and-click games really, you get the maximum benefit, is if you're playing it together, if you got a friend and you try out every idea. I really have gratitude and appreciate the fact that I can enjoy another moment of food in my life. That this is actually a choice in my life, that I can actually choose whether I want to eat or not. I don't have to search for my food. I'm so honored. I'm so honored. I would say that in addition to playing Dungeons and Dragons, okay, Dungeons and Dragons, playing a point-and-click game with your friend, and taking improv classes. Those are all the best ways to learn improv. Because with a point-and-click game, you're testing out everything. You are yes-anding it. You're going, okay, that's a cool idea. Let's try that. Yeah, let's try it. We don't have any other options. You are forced, and I'm talking to those of us who are competitive or want to be the one who's getting the accolades, the one who's getting the celebration in the limelight. It's difficult to, give up the steering wheel to someone else and let them try it and go, let me test it out. But it's so rewarding. It feels so good when someone, and you see the value in when you say, yeah, let's try your idea. And you see the value in what happens when you allow someone to try out their idea. It feels so good for me, I know, when people let me try out my ideas. So when you grant that to someone, and it makes me feel more like it's my project when people are granting me the opportunities to test out my ideas. And if they know that I'm all for testing out their ideas, then that excites them, ideally, to feel trust in letting me try out my ideas. So when you're in that situation of point-and-click game, and you're testing it out with someone, oh my God, it's fun. It's fun. And maybe even if one of you is writing down ideas while the other one is playing, and then you hand it off, you test it out. You go, okay, you try it. And it can be just as fun to watch as it is to play, as we've seen. As we've seen with people just playing video games and getting audiences. Sam and Max. The production design is awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. The entire environment is its own character, and it demands you to interact with it, to look at it, to test things out with it. The soundtrack is awesome. All of a sudden, it'll go into some crazy musical. There's a Chuck E. Cheese type place. Oh, this is so funny too. You get to go onto a movie set. You get to see what it's like behind the scenes. And what's interesting is that there are 4 or 5 different It's like one studio, but there are 4 or 5 different sets within that studio. And one of them's like an American Idol. One of them's like a sitcom. Wow. It's cool too because certain character traits that you learn about these people, it carries all the way through all these adventures. And so there, you start to see like what are the habitual things that these guys do, and what are habitually. First of all, it shows you habitually. It gets you into a habit of doing certain things in a certain way. So when you're in that habit of trying out certain things, you then, since you're in a habit of doing it with this one thing, you're inclined in your brain subliminally to then go, oh, let me try that out with this thing over here. Let me try it out here. Let me try that out with this. Let me try that out here. When you get a certain message over and over and over again, everything there are no let's see. I was just going to say there are no throwaway lines, but I mean really, every piece of dialogue in this is a gem. It is so good. It is so acrobatical. It's like those hard-boiled detective books mixed with like David Mamet mixed with Shakespeare. It has layers and layers of insinuations. It forces you to think creatively and critically, I suppose. You know, there's that term critical thinking. I would like to think creative thinking. If we could redefine it as that. I just realized that. That would be really nice. Creative thinking. Creative thinking. Critical in my mind is, you know, at first I used to just run from that. Critical thinking. But call myself a critical thinker, meaning I try out everything. Okay, so, but when I think of the word critical, I think of a minutia detailed, like that's a sniper. You're so careful. You got to stay right on the line, man. You got to stay right on the line. Critical thinking. Creative thinking is like, oh, open it up. Open it up. You got the whole universe in your arms. You got the whole universe in your arms. And that's when you just open up wide and you got that whole expanse of all that is. You got all the dimensions, all the layers, all the multi-layers within the multi-dimensions. Wow. Wow. Do a test. Follow your bliss. That's the other funny thing. There's a guy in here named Hugh Bliss. And they start using Roy G. Biv. Roy G. Biv is one of the earliest things that I learned. My cousins taught me Roy G. Biv. Kelly and Dan. They were my art teachers growing up. And it was through them that I learned of Salvador Dali. So I was very surprised. Later on in life, it was the very first artist I ever heard of that I knew a name of. And I was very surprised as I grew up and I saw in schools and whatnot them mentioning Salvador Dali in an art class or something, and I'm going, oh my God, that's my dude. Gosh. Art, man. It's funny, I did my first animation for Tommy Gardner. I can't wait for this to come out. I did my first yesterday. 15 seconds. Took me quite a few hours. Just because I had to, I had to animate it. But it was fun. And so this is going to be for his new single, Desiree. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. And playing this game, Sam and Max, like seeing these little guys running around and interacting with each other, it's starting to make me think of making a little, make 15-second cartoons, even if I just start with that. Yeah. That could be fun. It's interesting because in Sam and Max, there are these three guys where... Let me back up. You notice there's graffiti on a wall. I mean, if you look at the graffiti, you start noticing there's some graffiti in other places and other places. And then you end up finding out who the culprit is and who's doing the graffiti. And then you find out that you can get a spray paint can and cover up the graffiti. And do, it's like... You find out what the personality traits are of these characters, and then you use the things that they like for them, particular to them. You learn how to tailor fit things. So these games teach you to be adaptable. They expand your awareness. It's so funny. They made Timothy Leary. They made a Ram Dass. They made a Timothy Leary reference. They made a Ram Dass, except it was Albert. What's his real name? Albert. Is it Albert Hoffman? No. It'll come to me. But it's very smart. It's very intelligent, very educated. This game has so many little clips along. So much, not throwaway. Nonchalant, that's what it is. So much nonchalant dialogue. I just had this revelation the other day that, wow, for the longest time, I chose the style of comedy where I'm deadpan humor. And I realized that no wonder why people couldn't get my humor, because they didn't realize I was joking because I was so deadpan about it. I realized facetiousness and sarcasm works if someone, if people know what your barometer is. If they know what your default mode is, oh yeah, he's a nice guy, he's a totally cool guy. So when someone like that makes a whoa, outlandish joke or something completely esoteric or something, whoa, and you're like, okay, this guy has got to be, this is a total joke because this is unlike this person. But when your attitude becomes sarcasm, when that becomes your default mode, then is it actually sarcasm? Is it really actually facetiousness, or is that actually then your now actual personality? Because you've got to be able to witness the contrast between those. In this game, the dialogue is always dry, facetious, playful. And you learn to become accustomed to it. That's just the language. That's just how it is. If you're going to go to a different country and you see in Sweden This is how they are. This is how they act. This is how they are. Like, I met a Russian girl named Aigul, which I thought was a phenomenal name. I love eyes and various spellings of them. And she was so funny because she did not let on that she was joking. Somehow I was able to get into the groove that she was joking. And I was just like, oh my God, this is hilarious. So like this game, Sam and Max, just so layered. It is so layered. It's layers within layers. It's layers within layers. Like and it's great. It's great with doing the rule of 3 as well. It's really good with doing the rule of 3. Whoever wrote this, I think had to have been stand-up comedians or improv taught, because they just roll with it. They build upon it. They never come right out and really actually say what the thing is. It's all just alluded to. It's all talked about. Like, for instance, in Sopranos, I just finally saw The Sopranos. Wow, what a great show. I didn't see it when it was out. But my sister Jenny and I, we sat through and we saw it. We saw The Sopranos, and oh my gosh, it was just absolutely phenomenal. The dialogue, the layers of insinuations, intonations. You could tell if someone was pissed off at someone by the way that they would say what they said. And you're like, okay, that person's marked, Look at him. He's looking at him in this way. That man is marked. Like, okay, something's going to happen to that dude. And just the dialogue. They'd say, oh, yeah, did you talk to that guy, that thing we talked about with the, and just always in code. So they don't treat the audience like they're idiots. They're not spoon-feeding it to you. They're not waiting for you to catch up. They're going, zip, 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 zip. And it's up to you. They're giving you, that's a beautiful gift to give an audience. That's a beautiful gift. They're not treating us like we're stupid. They're inviting us to lean in, to investigate closer, to really become interactive with it, to make it personal. They're inviting us to lean in and listen. Oh, what is this? Because it's the important stuff that you really don't have to yell and scream about. I realize that my normal voice is like a yelling voice. I think for a number of reasons. One, I'm short, and I always had to yell so my tall friends could hear what I was saying. Two, I felt that many times throughout my life, people just didn't listen to my ideas. I had to fight to be heard. So I think when I come straight out of the gate, it's like a rodeo bull. Straight out of the gate, I'm screaming. The other thing is, I listen to my speakerphone when I talk to people on a phone. I use the speakerphone option, and it sounds like they're yelling at me. And so, as a result, I yell at them. I'm sure I've had many roommates through the years, many neighbors, both above, below, and on the sides. Neighbors who have heard me talking loudly to my friends and family on speakerphone. I'm realizing now as I'm saying this out loud that I could turn the speaker much lower and I wouldn't have to scream and yell. The microphones on these are very good. I don't have to be like Gordon Cole from Twin Peaks, where I'm like, hey, Coop. That's what I feel like. Holy cow. How much energy am I spending by yelling? There's this idea that when you talk on stage, don't trust the microphone. Don't expect the microphone to pick up what you're saying. A lot of times people will step away from the microphone and then on top of that not speak loud enough. They think the microphone's going to pick up exactly what they're saying, what they're mumbling in their tiny personal space. So they say, step up to the microphone, speak into the microphone. And too many times I've felt like I've had to be the opera singer who has had to hit the back wall. 100 seats in. Talk to the back wall. And I think what my issue is, I've talked to the back wall everywhere. I can understand now why my buddy Brian was like, dude, you are screaming. Oh my gosh. So, Sam and Max. Sometimes when I get excited, it's really, I get loud. I want it to be heard. And I realize I don't need to be a megaphone. So, me saying this out loud is a subconscious seed that I'm placing in my ear. I think I scream on TikTok too. And then I raise the volume from there too. It's like, what? What are you doing? Why do you want to be screaming at these people? You don't need to be screaming. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. So yeah, Sam and Max Save the World remix. I'm sure there are even more games out besides this. Whoever these makers are, I've got to interview these guys. They came out the soundtrack. You can hear it on Bandcamp. All of these songs, even the original ones from the original game too, all of this music, tons. It's so enjoyable to listen to, I got to tell you. I'm going to be searching for it on TikTok. That's one of the new things I've been doing with TikTok is if I hear a song that I really dig out there in the world, I'm like, oh, let me search for it on TikTok, because then I can use that as a soundtrack, as a background while I'm recording, from within the app itself. And so I got to check to see if they got the Sam and Max soundtrack in there. If they do, gosh, that would be phenomenal. That'd be phenomenal. These writers just must have a blast putting this stuff together. It would be really cool to know where they first, where the idea first hatched, actually. Gosh, I want to say, I keep getting flashbacks of, it was either Maniac Mansion or Zach McCracken. One of them, Maniac Mansion came out the newspaper, I remember. It came with a newspaper. The floppy disc came with in the box, a fold-up newspaper. But then there was this red lens that you had to look at the newspaper through to be able to see secret codes hidden within it that you could not see if you were just simply looking at the newspaper itself. And within that newspaper, it gave you all kinds of clues that would help you solve issues that you came across within the game itself. So you would start making connections in your brain. But obviously the connection would only come about. See, the connection, you got to have one side over here and one side over there. So it's like we got the plug, we got the outlet, input, output. So you have to, it's a funny thing. You have to first just become curious about something, and that becomes an input, and you're hoping there's going to be an output, something to plug it into. And so you try all kinds of things. You're going, okay, are you going to work? Are you going to work? Are you going to work? And you start getting, you have to turn on that part of your brain with that curiosity where you're going, okay, I'm starting to see connections here and here and here and here. Maybe that's a possibility with every single thing else. Maybe I should lean in closer and really pay close attention to the dialogue. Pay attention to the posters. There are posters within Sam & Max. There are posters outside that are hanging around. Pay attention to the signs. It teaches you. It teaches you how to use signs, and because later on in the game you'll have to use signs. But you had to first test out interacting with posters on the wall in order to make the connection later on that was something you needed, that was a valuable piece of information that you needed for something later on in the game that unlocked a mystery. But you had to be, but that was the funny thing. You never would realize that was the reward that was coming to you unless you first unlocked that first thing. I mean, it's just like life. It's just like life. We talk about this all the time. I always use that analogy of casting the spells, walking into a room and going, okay, I'm going to cast a spell and see if there's a secret door. And then you go, whoop, what do you know? There's a secret door. The dungeon master left a secret door here for us. But you had to cast the spell first. The dungeon master was hoping that you would cast that spell. The dungeon master was hoping that you'd use your freedom of choice to cast that spell, to then find a treasure trove of crazy monsters, crazy treasure, amazing investigations, side quests galore that were in this particular room. Gosh. Wow. Just fascinating. Just fascinating. I would love to know if the makers of Sam & Max were Dungeons and Dragons players too. There are maps that you have to figure out, how many choices are we going to allow for these people to have? And then once they make one choice, how many choices within that choice? How many branches off of each choice do they get? And how many branches is it necessary for them to go in deep? How deep down the branch trail is it necessary for them to go in order to find this piece of information that will then help them out later on? And then there are things, of course, where maybe there wasn't the option to ask this other extra question. But now that you found this particular thing, it now gives you an option to test it out. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Do you play point and click games? Do you play like Unforeseen Incidents? That was a game that was given to me by Emily Morganti for me to review. I loved it. Well, just the other day, 2 or 3 days ago, they had something on Steam. I didn't even know they could do this on Steam. You could watch live things on Steam. I don't know if it's one of those things kind of like Twitch or not, but on Steam, it was these people doing the behind the scenes of Unforeseen Incidents. And showing you like characters that didn't make it into the game, which was awesome, which was crazy. It was like a question mark that I didn't even realize that I wanted the answer to, or that I even had a question of. There's a guy in there who they're like, yeah, he's the mechanic. He's the guy who owns the car in the garage. Wow, that's interesting. And they're like, we couldn't find a way to get him in there. So in the game, Unforeseen Incidents, there's this part where there's a car that's in a garage, and it's the parts are laying about, and you have to put the motor together. So it was cool. You saw this behind the scenes stuff. And then they also did one for the game Unavowed. Oh yeah, the creators of that too. They're choosing all just like the wrong Lamplight. No, it was Lamplight. The Lamplight guys. Lamplight City, I think it was called. Detective game. And they're just choosing all the wrong things. They're showing you what happens. Which is great, because these are things that you kind of like tiptoe through the tulips with certain games. You go, oh my gosh, what are, especially now because there are consequences in these games. So if I say the wrong thing to this character right now, is it going to cut off my chances from something that I might need from them later on? But maybe in order to get this piece of information, I have to talk to them. I have to yell at them in order to get that information. But you're like, okay, do I risk yelling at this character to get that piece of information? All of a sudden then they're nice to you now that you yelled at them. At first they're grumpy and they're like, rah, rah, but now you yell at them and they're like, oh, wow, okay. Then they're nice to you. So you're like, wow, this is really interesting. But you had to try that thing. So anyway, that's what these guys were doing. They were showing you the behind-the-scenes stuff. So we shall see. Maybe there'll be one of these things for Sam and Max. There is a Sam and there is a Max Twitter account by themselves, and they'll comment on each other. It's awesome. It's like Tick and Arthur. Reminds me of like Tick and Arthur. And it's funny too. They play with your imagination too, because they play with your brain. Because it's such a parody of what's going on in the world, like Mad Magazine. They're exposing to you, like, politics, advertisements, celebrities. They kind of expose these things. Like, all right, look, this is really what's going on here. This is what's at the bottom of this here. This is what's going on. Sam and Max, they educate you. See, with this type of stuff within the game itself. It's teaching you the behavior of the game itself. Now, in addition to that, what it's doing is it's also preparing you how to actually play the game of life and what happens when you try all these different combinations of things when you're out there in the world. So it's just a wonderful thing because it makes you question and go, what's this about this? What's going on here? There's a psychiatrist named Sybil, which is funny because Sybil is that movie about the woman who's a schizophrenic. Well, this woman is she starts out as a psychiatrist, but you realize that she used to be a tattoo artist, and so throughout the game she has multiple different jobs, sometimes different jobs within the same episode. She's like, I got tired of that, now my new calling is this, or I got tired of that, now my new calling is this. So it's like she's switching personalities within each of these jobs. She becomes a beta tester for this VR game, for a virtual reality game. And I found so many synchronicities within this game that I've recently been talking to people about and thinking about, and just like, what the heck, are you kidding me? That's crazy. It's just nuts. It's just fascinating. You could tell when people had a lot of fun making something. And it's so absurd. It's so beautifully absurd. It's so beautifully absurd. Like there's a part where you're on the moon and you can drive your Cadillac to the moon and drive it back to Earth. And you're going, of course. And there are parts where you're wondering, is Max imaginary or is he actually is Sam the only one who can see Max, or is Max really can everybody see Max? Because other people interact with him, but Sybil is like, your imaginary friend that you talk to. So it just plays with so many different things. So much fun. So much fun. It goes to show you, just like within life, there's so many unexpected things that come around every corner. So many unexpected things. Oh my God. It's yeah. Oh man. Must be so much fun and so crazy to try to come up with those games. Yeah, do you play point and click games? Do you play video games? Let me know. Call me up. Call the hotline. Leave a voice message. 561-203-9179. Leave a message. You can also call. You could also leave a message with inspiradoprojecto@gmail.com. You can email it there. And I'll put it in the next episode. How about that? In fact, let's go to a couple of man behind the machine things next. Thanks for listening to Inspirado Projecto.
Hey bro, what do you think about reality television? Are you watching the train wreck that is The Bachelorette? Have you seen what's going on with Claire, the cougar? Reality TV, what comes to mind?
It's so interesting because reality TV has completely expanded into a whole new world of perspectives, huh? It started with The Real World. Was that the first one? The Real World on MTV? And then I think Survivor, and then Big Brother. Unless Big Brother had been around before Survivor. I don't really know, but my buddy Jeremy loved Big Brother. He had the subscription to Big Brother where you can watch these people 24/7, watch them in their house. And it's interesting because social media has become our new reality television in many, many ways. Another form of it. Just like with reality television, you can stage certain things and do certain surprises and do special editing in certain ways where you can hatch the circumstance of conflict that does not actually reflect whatsoever what might have actually happened linearly. See, they have the option and pleasure of being able to go non-linear with the editing. So they can use outtakes, they can use all kinds of things to make it look like people suddenly getting into fights and stuff like that. So game shows, that's a reality show. It's really interesting when I hear like this. I think of reality shows as an example whenever I think of people who are like, well, I don't know what to do. You know, my life is so boring, or, you know, who would ever want to hear my kind of music, or who would ever would want my kind of art or whatever. And then I start thinking about all the bazillions of bands, all the bazillions of artists, all the bazillions of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Any sort of anything. And they all have followers, people that vibe with those things. And what's the main commonality is it's that diving deep into that commitment of what that thing is. So it's like anybody can, in a sense, become the next sort of reality star. I'm putting that in quotes. Whether it's someone on Instagram, someone on TikTok, YouTube, anywhere, Facebook. Just by going deep into their specific thing. You see that a lot with TikTok. You're presenting a particular image. You can edit these particular things the way that you want to edit them. You can present your life as it's, you know, as this character, or as this, what you feel is the most authentic version of yourself. And things that you never thought would, you're just like, oh my gosh, no wonder there's a following around this, because this, like there's a channel where there's a woman who, she's called Meg the Minimalist, and her whole channel is all about being a minimalist. It's all about her story as to why she became a minimalist, her philosophies on being a minimalist, all of the reasons why minimalism is the way to go, her house, what, you know, the minimalist, all answering all kinds of questions about kids' toys and artwork and, you know, all kinds of stuff. Clothes, what do you do with all your clothes? What about all your shoes? You know, and so she gets a kick out of it. So that's her thing. That's her, as one would say, the niche. Well, a niche, plain and simple, is just simply what you already love doing. If you got a collection of action figures, well, make a whole TikTok about that. You know, it's so interesting. So many different people. It's like anyone, if they just put themselves out there and they put out the beacon, they can bring in those who associate with that. Now, with reality TV, like you're saying, The Bachelorette, Bachelor, any of those kinds of shows, it's interesting how you can manufacture. When you know that there are specific hot button issues that you know that people get boiled up over, or they get really excited about, or when you pertain to those specific kinds of things, people will, they'll totally tune in. for those things. And especially if you show conflicts. Marriage is a really big one. Food, sex, these kinds of things that are these sort of tokens that when someone holds up the carrot and they go, look, come on over here, go over here, ooh, come on over here. So, yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't know what to think about. I haven't seen any of those shows, to be honest. So I just find it interesting. I just find it so very interesting that, yeah, there's this idea, this is just popping into my brain, how there's this idea that we'll tune into something like, let's say, Big Brother. We'll get a 24-hour, feed of someone else's just mundane life. And so someone will spend their life watching someone else's mundane life as if they were, like, oh, what's going to happen next? Is he going to sleep more than 8 hours today? What's going to happen next? She just stubbed her toe. Uh-oh, what's going to happen now? And so I've really been in the habit, particularly during quarantine, of, my slogan has sort of been, become the media. Be the media. Be the media. And, it's a switching the perspectives. The observer, from the observer to the participator. And just imagine all the music that you make, all the art that you make, how many people are out there going, whoa, they're looking in closer, they're going, whoa, this is fascinating. This is incredible. It's interesting, a lot of times we can, something that can just come so easily to us, painting, drawing, writing, music, etc., etc., something that could just come to so easy to us. It's like, wow, I'm astonished that person likes this thing. And we're going, well, that's something that they can't make. But then we think to ourselves, oh, geez, I'm so used to that thing. I played that riff so many times. But they've heard that riff the first time. So it's brand new and astonishing to them, just as it was brand new and astonishing to us when we unwrapped that riff the first time. We're offering them that opportunity to touch that epicenter. Huh. Anyway, thank you for the question. Thanks for the vision question.
It's Superhero, and you're listening to Inspirado Projecto.